Good afternoon or good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar Stump the Expert. Is the last webinar from the InduSoft series for 2013. So I'd like up front to thank all of you for your continued support and cooperation with InduSoft. We'll continue the webinar series next year, and we appreciate the feedback and the collaboration we received from all of you so far. As most of you know, this webinar has a much broader and open agenda. It's really open for you, each one of you. Ask your questions and provide your comments. So on the upper side of your monitor, you have a WebEx bar, and you can write your questions in the chat box or even in the Q&A box from the WebEx tool. And I will be reading your questions and answering them during the webinar. In the meantime, I have a couple of questions that were sent by email prior to the webinar. I will start with those, but again, during the webinar, feel free to write your questions and your comments at any time, and I will eventually get to them and answer your specific questions. So one here is how do I monitor during the runtime if a driver like the Modbus is running or not? And in InduSoft Web Studio, under communication, you can add drivers to your project. As you can see here, InduSoft has hundreds of drivers available in the product. So you can add one or more drivers to the project, and when you run the project, that particular driver is executed as one task of InduSoft Web Studio. There is a built-in function from InduSoft Web Studio called isTaskRunning, which can be used to check if any task from InduSoft Web Studio is running, including the driver task. And if you want to know if one specific driver is running, the syntax is the word driver, followed by the name of the driver you want to check, like, for instance, multi-CP. So this syntax here, isTaskRunning driver multi-CP, returns 1 when the driver is running, or 0 when the driver is not running. So if I come here and I shut down the driver, exit the driver, the function returns the value 0. I can even start the driver using the function start task. So in this case, I just use the keyword driver, and all the drivers added to the project, configured in the project, are started. And if I want to stop one particular driver, I can use the function end task, and again use the syntax driver in the name of the driver that I want to shut down. So as you see here, when I execute the end task, the driver is no longer running. And if I execute the start task, the driver runs, and end task stops the driver. And obviously, you can, I'm using the database PI to demonstrate the functions, but you can create your own procedures and use those functions on the screens, on buttons, on global procedures, anywhere that you find fit in your project to start a driver dynamically, stop a driver dynamically, and check at any given time if a driver is running or not. Another question we have here is how do I quickly build a display for various mobile platforms? And the current version of InduSoft Web Studio 7.1 Spec 2 provides one feature called SMA, Studio Mobile Access. And this is the InduSoft Thin Client solution designed primarily with a standard technology called HTML5, which allows you to visualize the screens from any browser on any device that supports HTML5. So in the current version of the product, you can design screens just like using the standard InduSoft Web Studio. And if you want to make those screens available to the thin clients, all you have to do is go to Publish and save all screens as HTML. In the current version of the product, you can go here to Graphics, Thin Clients, Mobile Access, and define the list of screens that should be available during the runtime. So as you see here, let me just scroll down, you can create here a list of screens from your project that should be available in the menu during the runtime. So if I open a browser and type here the IP address of this computer, /MA, it will connect to the SMA Thin Client. And when I provide a valid username and password, it shows the areas that I configure on the project. And when I go to screen, it shows in this menu the list of screens that I defined in the configuration. And in the current version of the product, it supports all the shapes and main animations available in the product. In Service Pack 3 that we plan to release on Q1 of next year, so in a couple of months, we will add support for scripts as well. So the SMA Thin Client will support scripts, and it will also allow you to type directly in the URL the name of the screen that you want to open and bypass the menu. So if you just type the IP address of the computer /MA index.htm screen equals to, and the name of the screen you want to open, like animations. If I come here, I have one screen called animations, and actually it's index.htm. Then you can type your username and password, and InduSoft opens that screen directly. So you do not have to go through the menus to select one screen, and then you can navigate through different screens just like you do in a standard InduSoft Web Studio application. So as you see here, the screen scales properly to fit any kind of device and layout, and all the objects are rendered natively on the web browser. So it's completely different from the solution provided by our competitors today, which is, for the most case, a remote desktop connection with the server. So InduSoft has invested in R&D to create a native solution that runs natively on any browser that supports HTML5. So it's not, again, just a sluggish remote desktop connection with the server. And as you can see here, we can achieve a much better performance in user interface by designing the solution this way. Another question here is, how do I show alarm limits on the trained control? There are many different ways to display alarm limits on the trained control. I will show at least a couple of them. I will stop this application and create a brand new project. So let's say alarm test webinar. Very well. There we go. So I'll create here an alarm worksheet with a tag A. Create this tag as an integer. If it is higher than 80, then I'll show here the message level too high, for example. I just defined one alarm condition in the InduSoft Web Studio. So I save this worksheet, and now on the graphical screens, I can create a trained control. With any shape and size. And in this alarm control, I can go to points, define a color for the pen, for the points, the tag, in this case tag A, and I'm going to place a slider on the screen so I can vary the value of the tag A during the runtime. So a simple slider here, and I can change the value of tag A during the runtime. Save this screen, and run the application. Very good. So now I can change the value of tag A, and you see the values here on the screen. Now, if you want to differentiate the pen when it is in alarm condition, it is very simple. All you have to do is go to Points, and here in the style for the pen, you keep here the normal style with the color you want to assign for the pen, but you can select out of limits. And instead of using the normal settings for out of limits, you can define a completely different look and feel for out of limits. For instance, a thicker pen in color red. So, okay, we save it. And here during the runtime, automatically when the value is beyond the alarm limit, so when it is in alarm, the look and feel of the pen changes to indicate this to the user. So it's that simple to change the look and feel of the pen during the runtime and show the user when the value is in an alarm condition. Could be high, could be low, doesn't matter. Another way would be to show a horizontal line on the alarm limits, which is possible as well, either creating a pen, another pen only for the lines, or when the limits are very well defined and do not change drastically from pen to pen, an easy way to accomplish it is to create a horizontal line on the screen. And you can define here the look and feel for the line, the color for the line, the thickness and everything. So you create a horizontal line, and you define here the Y position for this line right here is 40. Actually, for the line is 440. And you can define, I want to bring this line up here. And the coordinate now is 70. So the difference is pretty much 370. So you can come here and apply a position dynamic and say, according to the high limit of tag A, I want to move this row 370 pixels upward. So you save there, and here on the trend control I can make the background transparent so I can see the line behind it. And here you have your control limit, and whenever the value goes beyond this limit, you see the pen changing of color as well. So the trick is pretty much to use a horizontal line and move the position of this horizontal line according to the vertical position animation built in InduSoft Web Studio. And obviously you can draw the line in a way that is trimmed by the width of the trend control, and you just see the line within the trend control itself. Very well. So one question here. I must display on grid object report with conditions, start date, end date, interval, data source for report is SQL Express database. I have a query, timestamp is greater than date, and timestamp is lower than date, and it works okay. Okay, so I think the question goes on. But I don't know how to display the interval. How to display the interval? Not sure I understood the question. You want to display the grid control on the screen, and in your query you make timestamp greater than and lower than, but you don't know how to display the interval. Maybe you don't know how to display the interval on the screen, or maybe when you print the screen. If the question, well, I'll do a very quick example here. So using InduSoft, I'm going to use SQL Express here and create a new database. Let me delete this one so I can create a brand new one. Okay, I'm deleting the database webinar from SQL Server, unless it is in use by another computer here. Let me just close the connection. It looks like webinar is in use by another process, so I can create just a brand new database to the system. So whenever SQL Server returns, I'll create a brand new database, and we can use that as an example. Very well. I'm going to create a new database here. For example, my test. Very good. And here in my test, I can, for instance, configure InduSoft under Project, Options, Default Database, and link InduSoft to that database. So the provider here is SQL Server. The server is in my local computer using SQL Express, and I want to link to the database my test. Very well. Now I can use here the trains task and link, for instance, the values of tag A to this database. Save it, as simple as that, and run. And InduSoft will automatically create the table and save and retrieve the values from the tag A from that particular database. So if I go back now to SQL Server and refresh it, under tables I see train 001, and if I query this table, I see the values here from the tag A being saved in this table. If I want to display those values on the screen, which I believe is part of the question, I can, let's make this object here smaller so I have room. Make this one same width and position there. Very well. So here in graphics, I can create a grid control. And in data source, select database. And in data source settings, select the table I want to retrieve data from. In this case, train 001. So I want to retrieve data from the tables, from the columns, timestamp and A. So I can go here to columns and define time underscore stamp in tag A, where tag A is a numeric value. Let's make the columns a little bit wider. Save it. InduSoft has online configuration. It connects to the database, retrieves the data, and shows the data on the screen. So now I show the values from those two tables. If I want to query the value and change the timestamp and things like that, all you have to do is customize the query after on the table fields. Because what InduSoft does is select whatever you have here on the columns from whatever you have here on the table. So if I want to customize this query, I can come back here to Project, Options, Default Database Advanced, and ask InduSoft to disable the delimiters so it allows me to extend the SQL statements directly on the grid control. That's an important step. And here, under data source, I can customize my query. For instance, where A is greater than 50, for example. First, a very simple condition. Save it, run it, and it queries only when the values are greater than 50. If you want to change this query during the runtime on the fly, all you have to do is concatenate tags to this query. For instance, if you want this value, this limit to be dynamic, just write between curly braces one tag here. Like for instance, let's create here my tag, a new tag. And I can create on the screen a text, let's say my tag, text.io, my tag, create this tag, and enable the input enabled. Now, every time I change the tag, I want to reload values from the database. So here in Advanced, I can create a tag in the reload field and just create a button to toggle the tag reloads every time I want to re-execute the query. So let's say here in this button, when I click here, I toggle the tag reloads. Let's change the label here of the button to reload grid. Very well. So right now it's querying all the rows where my tag is greater than 0. If I change here to 90 and reload, it executes the query again, but now with the statement only when A is greater than 90, and so on and so forth. And if you want to change this for timestamp, for whatever other condition, it's just a matter to create tags and concatenate those tags to the SQL statement. Once the statement is done, you just reload the toggle the reload tag to bring the data, to execute the query again and show the data on the screen. If you want to show the values of those tags, for instance, when you print this screen, then you can go to the screen attributes, and here in the title bar, you can change the border to thin, and here in the title bar, you can write whatever you want to write on the screen, like for instance, my report, and you can concatenate tags between curly braces here as well. And when you print this screen, this information will be added as the header of the report. And hopefully that addresses your particular question. Now, another question here, is it possible to run arbitrary SQL queries to populate a table grid? Yes, and it is pretty much what I just demonstrated here. Both in the field here, as well as in the table field, you can have string tags between curly braces, and during the runtime, you can change the values of those string tags and populate and toggle the reload tag to execute whatever queries you want to do on the SQL Server database. From the security point of view, you have to be careful about how you expose this to the user to avoid injections. But when you are designing the system, you have the ability to do that. For example, if I just create here my tag, just like this. So now here in my tag, I can enable here more characters. Save it, and if I write here in my tag just trained 001 and reload, just make sure that this tag, my tag has to be a string, so I can write whatever I want to it. So, okay, so trained 001, reload. Oh, there you go. Have to save it. I had not saved it. So now it grabs the data from train 001. And here I can write whatever I want, where A is equal to 0. Reload. Where A is greater than 90. Reload. So now I can write here whatever query I want. And again, if I want to customize the columns as well, the fields, all I have to do is define tags between curly braces in the fields right here as well. So you can add other SQL statements, aggregation, order by, group by, any SQL statement you want to execute, and the return of the query is displayed in the grid control. So quite open, flexible, and powerful as well. So I think continuation from the previous question. I don't know how to display the interval to show data with example. Okay, so this is the continuation from the previous questions. You want to query the data based on time, and you want to display data in intervals of 5, 10, or 15 minutes, for example. So there are different ways to do that, but the main part, the trick part, is to use one of the functions from SQL Server called datePart. This one, where you can define the interval. If I'm not mistaken, N is minutes, and the actual date. So let's say timestamp. If I come here, so as you see here, it shows how many minutes are there. So one way to do the query would be select, let's say, timestamp, and the tag A from trained 001, where date part from time stamp, actually in minutes, in minutes, the date part minutes from the timestamp is equal to 5, for example. 5 and 0 and 10 and 15 and things like that. Or even when the module, when the division of the date part from timestamp by 5 is equal to 0. So just to do something quick here, I can make when the division of the timestamp is equal, when the minutes is equal to 0, and the second is equal to 0. And I want to execute this on the my test database. So in this case, I don't have anyone where the minute is 0 and the second is 0, but it would show here only the records at the second 0 and minute 0. I think I have like in the minute 20, execute. So it shows here all the records at second 0 and minute 20. So again, if you divide the result of this expression by the interval you want in minutes and make the remainder of this division equals to 0, then you have the query for the interval that you want. And I showed how you can customize queries in the grid control. It's just a matter to add this portion here of the query to the grid data control. So how would you create a dynamic trend that would let the user pick any historical tags to put on trend control? I think the key point here is to allow the user to customize the pens that go on the trend control. And there are, again, different ways to do that. One way is just predefine the possible tags. So let's create some additional tags here. B and C, different colors and so on. Save, run. Okay, so using the standard trend control from InduSoft Web Studio, you can click here on those buttons for each one of the pens to remove pens dynamically during the runtime, and use this built-in command here, add pen, to add each one of the pens that have been previously configured on the trend control. And here you can just keep adding pens in different channels, so you can add and remove pens dynamically during the runtime without any extra configuration. If you want to have, let's say, just one pen, but allow the user to browse through your own grid, your own interface, checkboxes, whatever it is, who should be the tag for that pen? Then there is another approach we can take, which is to use pointers, what we call indirect tags in InduSoft. So here, instead of having a tag A, you can use an indirect tag from InduSoft using the syntax @ and let's say 10, and create this tag as a string. Okay? Now, during the runtime, if I have here pen, if I have a way to populate the tag pen with the name of the tag I want to display, then I can dynamically point this pen to different tags on the fly. So, for instance, if I create here a text data link to the string tag pen, and I configure here in points @pen as the name of the tag for this particular pen, for this particular point, during the runtime, if pen has a value A, the train displays the value of the tag A. If I change the value of the tag pen to B, now the trained control is displaying the value of the tag B, which happens to be 0. If I change back to A, now it automatically shows the value of the tag A. So by using one indirect tag, you can dynamically point to any other tag in the whole application. You could have 10 million tags in the application. Using a string tag, you can point to any other tag in the whole application. And hopefully it addresses the particular question you had. Oh, good. So some feedback that it did address some questions here. Another question is, can you show how to create one tag name with either multiple alarm limits or variable alarm limits? Absolutely yes. So InduSoft Web Studio, for each tag, supports different alarm limits. A nice way to see that is to type the tag name here on the ribbon interface on the home tab and select properties. And in the alarm tab, you can see all the different limits that are available for each tag. So each tag can have a high limit, low limit, rate of variation, and a deviation plus and minus based on a set point tag. Deviation plus and minus is useful when the limits are variable around a dynamic set point, which happens to be another tag. Each one of those limits can be configured, can be hard-coded, either here on this dialog or in the alarm worksheet or worksheets where you configure the alarms. Like, for instance, I can say that if I is lower than 20, then I have level low, and if A is high, much higher, so if it is higher than 90, have the message level critically high, and if A is lower than 10, I would say level critically low, and so on and so forth. So at this particular point, I associated the tag A to 4 different limits with different messages. Now, a nice thing, and I believe that's part of the question. The second part is how to change those limits dynamically during the runtime. And an easy way to do that is using what we call the tag fields. So for any tag in InduSoft Web Studio, you have many fields, and some fields are used for alarms. So if I use here, for instance, for high limit, and I use here a text data link, if I use the syntax A dash greater than high limit, instead of displaying the value of tag A, I will display the high limit associated with the tag A. And if I click here in Input Enabled, I can write to this field as well. the limit fields are read and write fields. So I can create another one for the high limit. So change just here the label to high limit. Another one to low limit. So if I come here, the field low limit. And the last one for low limit. So if I go to the text, low limit. Save it. And here you can see all the limits, and I can change them right here on the fly. So I can say the limit for high is no longer 80, it is 40, for example. And automatically I change the limits, the high limit for the tag. So it's that simple to view the limits for the alarm, to change the limits for the alarm, and to assign different limits to the same tag. The question is, that must have changed at some point. I thought you couldn't do that in other versions, but I could be wrong, referring to multiple alarms on one tag name. But yes, that was my question. Thank you. Glad you could do that, and it has been this way for quite a long time. What you cannot have is assign two high limits for the same tag. You can have a high and a high. You can have a low and a low. You cannot have two highs or two highs or two lows or two lows. But using high, low, deviation plus and minus, and rates of deviation, you can have up to 7 alarms assigned to each tag. Very good. So it looks like we covered all the questions posted so far. Any other questions? There is one question here about if it is possible to run scripts on the SMA. Yes, this is something that is under development, and it will be available in Service Pack 3, which is short to be QA'd and released to the market in a couple of months. One question here, can you demonstrate the report functionality? That's a very good question in an extremely broad sense. Report can have many different connotations and can be in very different ways, but I'll try at least to mention some of the typical ones. Some of them are here on the screen. The grid control per itself is used in many applications as a reporting tool, especially when you just need a tabular format for your report. You create a screen with the grid control, you filter dynamically whatever you have to filter, and then if you want to print that, you can print the screen, or you can go to the grid control under Advanced, configure a tag in the print trigger field, and whenever this tag changes of value, we dump into the printer a report with all the rows that are currently filtered in the grid control. And if it has more than one page, we break in several pages automatically. You can also dump to a PDF report just using the PDF printer to trigger the action. And here in PDF file name, you can either hard code or configure a tag in curly braces to define the name of the file where the PDF report will be created. So the grid control is a typical, I would say a very popular tool used to create reports. Some reports are just a trained interface, so you can use the standard trained control, and again, either print the screen, or you can come here to Advanced and use this export to file feature in the trained control, where you can use a tag to toggle the action, to trigger the action, to export the graphical trained to an external file. Here in file name, you either hard code or define a tag to be in curly braces to be the name of the picture file, And here in format, you define what is the format that you want to dump this picture into. And I said a few times that you can print the screen. In order to print any screen in the project, you can use the print window function. It's a built-in function from InduSoft called print window. If you do not define any parameter, it automatically prints the screen where the function was called from. But you can specify another screen, like another screen, and this screen does not even need to be opened to be sent to the printer. What is pretty cool, you can have a screen which is a report screen you don't want necessarily to open in the monitor, but eventually you want to execute this function, print window, in a button or in a script to, in background, render this screen and send the graphical content of this screen with tag values, whatever it is on the screen, to the printer. And if you want to dump that into a file, you can use this function save screenshot, which is very similar to the print window, but instead of sending the screen to the printer, it dumps a screenshot of the screen to a file. And then you can send this file by email using, for instance, the Send Email X function or any other tools in InduSoft to send emails. Other way to create reports would be to using here under Tasks the report folder, where you can create reports in RTF format or in text format, text being a CSV, a single text file, HTML, XML, any file formats where the characters are saved in a single text format. So here you define the output file. Let's say ctemp myreports.csv, for example, and here I use between curly braces the tags I want to add to this report, like date, time, and the tag A. And if I want to keep appending this report, let's say every minute or every time I click a button, I just check the checkbox, click disk append. So I save it, and I give a name to this report. Let's say here, report 1, could be any name. So report 1 is the name of my template, and here in the output file is the name of the file that will receive the actual data for the report. Every time I want to append this report, to append data to this report, all I have to do is execute the function report, disk, and the name of the report template. In this case, report1.wrap. So save it, run it. So I can click here 1, 2, 3 times. And if I go to temp, I have here myreports.csv, and I have here the value of the tag date, the tag time, and the tag A. And in this case, in Excel, by default, it does not use comma as the separator if the format of the file is Unicode. So if I come here and uncheck Unicode, the file, let me delete the file here. So I go to temp, and I go to my report, delete the file. So if I generate again, now the file is created as a report in ASCII format, and Excel automatically split the values using the CSV format. So every time there is a comma, it splits the value to the next column. So those are some ways to generate reports. There are a few additional products available to reports. One is the BI dashboard, which is provided by InduSoft as an add-on. I believe I have available here in my computer. Let me just double check. Yes. You can download it from the InduSoft website, and you can purchase this application as an add-on. And using this tool, you can create your own reports, and you can customize your reports on the fly and add pie charts, Pareto charts, bar charts, whatever it is. to your reports. So just to make a quick demonstration here, I will log into the system. I'm going to create a, let me log on again. There you go. Close. So I can create a new project. I'm going to call here webinar. Very well. So the idea of this BI dashboard template is to allow you to query data from any database. It doesn't have to be a database created by InduSoft. Could be a SQL Server database or an MDB file created by any other system. So here in data sources, I can create a link to another database. So I'm going to browse here for this file, for example, and create the queries. If you don't know SQL, you can literally drag and drop and see the table names, the column names, and say, I want to query data from this table. InduSoft builds the queries on the fly for you. And here in dashboards, you can build your own dashboards, your own reports. So you can pick whatever format you want, like this one, for example. And then build charts, add charts to those areas. Like using this query, I want to show a pie chart, using this column for label, this column for value, and I want it to be with different colors. Here, I want to use this query and show a Pareto using this column for the name, this column for the values. And this data could be any data. Could be downtime, could be most common alarms, could be number of times that a particular equipment was turned on or off, number of times that one door was open or closed, whatever it is for the BI dashboard is just data. So you can keep adding your dashboards, and if you go to report, you can define how many pages you want in your report, and send to the printer, save as PDF, do whatever you want with those reports. So this would be another option, especially if you want to generate reports based on data from a SQL database or MDB file. That's an extremely straightforward solution, and you or your customer can customize the reports on the fly. And finally, another possibility as well is to use another add-on for InduSoft Web Studio from Dream Reports. So if you go to InduSoft Web Studio, we have here under add-ons the BI dashboards, we have toolkits, we have gateways, and on the InduSoft store, you have also, or also on the add-ons, you have the Dream Reports, and you can use Dream Reports, you can purchase Dream Reports directly from InduSoft and use Dream Reports directly on InduSoft Web Studio. And those are some of the add-ons you have. You have here the Dream Reports for InduSoft Web Studio, and you can create many different reports in different shapes and forms using this add-on for InduSoft Web Studio. So it can go anything from the grid control, the trend control, the report task from InduSoft, the BI dashboard, all the way up to the Dream Reports add-on. Another question is it possible to change a tag configured with server scope using a pointer tag configured with local scope from a thin client? Excellent question, and the answer is yes. You can create a local tag as the pointer, and with this local pointer tag, point to a server tag to get the value from the server. The first time you do that on the thin client, if you're doing that in a script, the script can take a few extra seconds there, because if the server tag does not exist in the virtual tags database on the thin client, it needs to be done. It needs to be included at that moment. But yes, it will work. Some feedback here, some positive feedback. It looks like the answers provided the information people were asking for. Another question is, when InduSoft be Windows 8 compatible, or is it already? Very good question. InduSoft Web Studio is already 100% compatible with Windows 8. By the way, I'm running Windows 8 here in my computer. So InduSoft Web Studio 7.1 is and has been for a while fully compatible with Windows 8. By the way, being Microsoft certified partner, we have access to the operating systems, databases, tools from Microsoft before they release them to the market. And for the past few years, or even many years, we have been able to modify our product and QA our product to make sure that by the time that a new operating system from Microsoft hits the market, our product is already compatible with it. So today, yes, InduSoft Web Studio is compatible with Windows 8, 32, 64 bits, even and with Windows 8.1 as well. In addition to Windows C, Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows Embedded, Windows 2003, 2007, or 2012 Server, 32 bits or 64 bits. So pretty much all the main platforms available out there. And with the SMA Thin Clients, we support not only Windows platforms with Internet Explorer 10, but also Android and iOS devices, iPads, iPhones, with the Chrome or Safari web browser as well. Is there an easy way for lookup table for alarm messages based on the code from server drive? Let me just make sure I understand the question, but I believe you have a code, and based on this code, you want to display a different message. If you read an integer value from a server drive, I believe in this case, and based on this value, you want to display different alarm messages. Again, like I said a few times here, there are different ways to do that. And one way would be using a built-in control called Smart Message. So let me go back to a previous application here. So using, for instance, this built-in control called Smart Message, you can associate here to the messages for each value one different message. Like, for instance, no alarms, or alarm 1, 2, 3, alarm 4, 5, 6, whatever you want here. You can even use tags between curly braces here to customize those messages, date. So this is pretty much your lookup table. If you want the lookup table to be an external file, you can change here the data source to be a text file. So you can have a CSV file, for example, to be your lookup table. But if you want to hard code in the object, you build the lookup table here, and you can change the look and feel of the object, the color of the text, the background color for the text, the background color for the rectangle. Select here, copy to other messages. And during the runtime, you associate one tag to the object, like let's create here tag X as an integer, and I'll create here an interface where I can assign a value to the tag X. So input enabled, save, test, run. So if test has the value 0, no alarms. 1, alarm 1, 2, 3. 2, alarm 485, and the tag date there. So you pretty much, just by changing the value of one tag, and the value of this tag could, in our case, come from the server drive, display different messages, in this case alarm messages or whatever it is, on the screen. Other way to do that, if you want to use the alarm task, you can create an array tag, for example, for the alarm messages, and write to each one of those positions the bit 1 according to the value from the integer tag. And another thing that could be helpful for you as well, you could have a single tag. Let's say that if you have 0 on this tag, you have no alarms. Any value different from 0 is an alarm code from the servo. So you could have an integer tag here with the high limit 1, and the actual message is a tag between curly braces. So my message. So you can change this message dynamically during the runtime. And the lookup table is whatever data source you want. Could be a text file, could be a database, could be any data source that you might want to use. But using the InduSoft built-in functions for database is very easy to create a lookup table in the database or even a text file. And based on the value from the servo tag, set this tag with the message that you want to display on the screen. And if you want a very specific example about that, I'll be happy to provide it to you and help you create your specific application. But I believe I touched it here on the main points that you asked. If not, please let me know, and I will go a little bit deeper. One question here is, what about Windows RT? Windows 8 RT, it has a different kernel from the regular Windows 8, so this is a good question. The Windows RT with Internet Explorer can be used as a thin client for the SMA solution of InduSoft Web Studio, but the runtime of InduSoft Web Studio as from the runtime for the vast majority of the systems out there does not run natively on the Windows RT yet. InduSoft is changing the product over the past years to be completely platform agnostic, to run not only on Windows RT but on Linux, Android, iOS natively, even the runtime. The first portion of this migration is the graphical interface that we call the SMA, but eventually the plan and the goal is to have the runtime available on other platforms as well. So today, Windows RT can be a SMA thin client for InduSoft Web Studio, and the runtime is supported on Windows 8, but not the RT version. One point here is I can't see the mobile access on Google Chrome, but on Safari it works okay. Is there any configuration to do on Chrome? No, there is not any configuration. It's important to make sure that you have a recent version of Chrome, anything that has been released in the past 12 months. For instance, in my case here, if I go about Chrome, I'm using the version 31. So if you have an older version, I would recommend to upgrade to the version 31. If the problem persists, feel free to contact InduSoft's technical support, but it might be some security settings on the browser. A nice thing about the SMA solution is that it does not use plugins, so you do not have to enable plugins in your browsers, which is becoming increasingly difficult to do. So the SMA uses the native driver, no plugins. On the other hand, the browser needs to be able to support HTML5, and the particular version that the browser that you have needs to be up to date enough to support HTML5. But again, if you're using a modern version, if you're not using a new version of the browser, I recommend to upgrade it. And if you are, I would recommend to contact technical support and we can troubleshoot it remotely for you. But yes, the SMA is designed to run on Chrome, and we have done several tests successfully on Chrome, and we have many different customers that use the SMA on Chrome as well as Safari and Internet Explorer 10. Very well. it looks like we reached the end of the questions and about the time that we had assigned for the webinar. So here you have some contact information for InduSoft. If you want to contact me directly, feel free to send emails to fabio.souza@indusoft.com. I'll be more than happy to address any requirements or suggestions of enhancements for the product. If it is a technical support question to have a feedback in a timely manner, feel free to use support@indusoft.com. For generic questions about InduSoft or commercial questions, feel free to use info@indusoft.com or contact us by email or the live chat. And I'd like to take the final minutes to thank each and every one of you again for your support over the years. This company is really built by our customers, so we appreciate your support and your cooperation over the years. Thank you for the audience today and for the previous webinars as well. And I hope the webinar today has addressed some or all of your questions, and I hope to see you again in webinars next year. Thank you, everybody. Have a great end of year, and thanks again for your support.